Introduction, Christie Ellis Stories. The slow drift. There are moments in life when the world seems to exhale, when time slows just enough for us to hear the quiet truths we've been avoiding. The quiet drift begins in one of those moments. It is a story born from stillness, from the gentle spaces between loss and discovery, and from the way a single step off the familiar path can change the shape of an entire life. You know, lately I've been thinking a lot about how families change, not always in big dramatic ways, but in the quiet ones we barely notice until years later. And as I've been sorting through my own thoughts, I decided I wanted to write these stories. It isn't my life, not exactly, but the feelings behind it, those are real. Maybe you've felt them too. Chapter 1. Before the Shift. Before the moment that changed me, I was just a kid who thought adults were always right. At 10 years old, the world still felt big and important, and I felt small inside, small but safe. I believed that teachers were like an extra parent who knew everything and only wanted to help. I believed effort always counted. I believed if I tried hard enough, I could do it. I didn't know yet that sometimes the people you trust the most can hurt you without even noticing. Most mornings when I walked to school, I would tell myself today will be a good day. My old backpack straps rubbed my shoulders, my worn-out shoes squeaked with every step, but my heart was hopeful. I wanted to do well. I wanted to make people proud. I wanted, more than anything, to make people proud of me. Reading was the hardest for me. Words slipped around in my head like they were shy or didn't want to be caught. Other kids read like the books belonged to them. I read like I was borrowing someone else's voice. Still, I practiced. I whispered sentences into my pillow at night, praying they would stay in my mouth the next morning. Before that day, I honestly believed they would. I tried so hard. Our classroom looked cheerful, bright posters, colorful bins, and a row of windows that caught afternoon sun. But even then, I knew brightness didn't always mean warmth. The room buzzed with other kids' confidence. I tried to match it, even if mine was mostly pretend. I remember sitting at my desk, little legs dangling, heart beating too fast as reading time approached. I remember smoothing my paper, hoping it made me look prepared. I remember telling myself, "You can do this, just don't mess up." I didn't know that this was how fear begins, quietly, gently, like a shadow stretching across your shoes. What I also didn't know, what I couldn't have known at 10, is how one ordinary moment can take something from you without making a sound. Because I didn't understand yet that grown-ups get tired. I didn't understand that their words aren't always true. I didn't understand that sometimes what they say has nothing to do with you, even though it feels like it does. At 10, I only understood things in the simplest ways. If someone said something, it must be because it was true. If a teacher sighed, it must be because I'd done something wrong. If she said I wasn't naturally good at something, then maybe that meant I wasn't naturally good, period. And so, before the sentence that would follow me for years, there was only me, small, hopeful, trying my very best, and trusting that the world would be kind. I didn't know I was standing on the edge of a moment that would quietly bend my life. A moment I would carry with me. Christie Ellis Stories. Stay tuned for Chapter 2, The Words That Changed My Life. In Chapter 1, I said the first drift isn't always between you and another person. Sometimes it's between you and yourself. And to understand how that happened to me, we have to go back, not far, just far enough to find the moment that quietly shaped everything after. I was 9 years old enough to notice things, too young to understand their weight. We were in a classroom that smelled like chalk and old books. My teacher, the kind of woman whose voice sounded like she'd already lived several lifetimes, leaned over my desk after I stumbled through a reading assignment. She didn't yell, she didn't glare, she simply sighed and said, just loud enough for me to hear, "Some kids just aren't naturally good at this." That was it, one sentence, barely more than a breath. But for a child who already tried so hard, those words didn't feel like a comment about reading. They felt like a comment about me. I nodded like I understood, like I agreed, but inside something small and important cracked. I didn't cry. I didn't complain. I just shifted. From that day on, I didn't try to shine. I tried not to disappoint. I tried not to cause trouble. I tried not to make mistakes. I didn't want to be the kid who wasn't naturally good at things. Looking back, that day was the beginning of the greatest drift of my life, the drift from my own confidence, from my own worth, from the belief that maybe I was allowed to take up space. It followed me into friendships, into relationships, into years of apologizing for things I didn't do wrong. All because of one sentence, spoken in an ordinary moment by someone who probably forgot it 5 minutes later, but I didn't forget. I carried it for decades. And that's why, in the next chapter, we have to follow that belief into adulthood to see how it echoed through the choices I made, the dreams I didn't chase, and the person I slowly learned to become. Hello, this is the Christy Ellis story, Chapter 3, The Echo Years Coming Soon. Chapter 3, Extended Version, The Echo Years, Christy Ellis Stories, fictional stories inspired by real-life lessons. Looking back, I can see now how many of the moments I thought were just life were actually echoes of that one classroom sentence, the first moment I started drifting from myself. At the time, I didn't notice it. I just lived quietly, cautiously, trying not to take up too much space. I didn't raise my hand in class. I didn't speak up at work. I didn't ask for help when I needed it most. I didn't go after opportunities that frightened me. I became the safe one in relationships. The one who said yes when she wanted to say no. The one who laughed off her own needs. The one who apologized for things she didn't even do. People thought I was humble, thoughtful, selfless, but the truth was simpler and heavier. I didn't believe I deserved to exist fully. I had folded myself into the edges of every room I entered. Then one evening, decades later, someone I loved gently said something that felt like a mirror. "Why do you always shrink yourself? I feel like you disappear, even when you're right beside me." I laughed it off. I joked. I brushed it away. But later, sitting alone in my quiet living room, with the weight of the day still on my shoulders, I couldn't shake it. I thought about every time I'd said yes, because I was too afraid to say no. Every time I'd held back laughter or tears, or swallowed my own ideas, just to keep the peace. Every moment I'd let someone else's opinion decide how much of me could exist in the world. I realized then, in a slow, painful way, that I had spent decades shrinking to avoid disappointment, shrinking to avoid conflict, shrinking to protect a fragile belief I had carried since I was 9. And in that quiet night, I asked myself a question I had never dared to ask before. What if the story I've been living isn't my truth? What if I don't have to shrink anymore? What if I can start to take up space just for me? It wasn't sudden. It wasn't a lightning bolt or even a grand revelation. It was quiet, like a river slowly carving a new path in the dirt. But it was enough to make me notice that the drift isn't only about relationships. It's about the distance we put between ourselves and the people we love, and the distance we put between ourselves and who we really are. I remembered the nights I stayed up worrying about being too much or not enough. I remembered the missed chances, the silent dreams, the things I never said, the chances I never took. And for the first time, I felt a small spark of something I hadn't felt in years: permission. Permission to exist fully, permission to take space, permission to begin again, even if slowly. And that, I realized, is the real lesson. The drift begins quietly, almost imperceptibly. But the choice to return to yourself, to honor who you are, to let yourself be seen, that choice can start at any moment. No matter your age, no matter the mistakes, no matter the years you feel lost, it's never too late to stop shrinking. Thank you for sitting with me, for listening, and for following this story. My stories are fictional based on shared stories and real-life lessons. Life Stories by Christiella. As we reach the end of this journey, let's take a moment to pause and reflect. Every chapter, every quiet realization has led us here, to a place of deeper understanding, not just about this story, but about our own lives as well. The paths we walk may be different, but the questions we face, the truths we discover, and the courage it takes to move forward. Let my journey remind us that it's okay to look back, to question, and to seek new directions. Before you go, I invite you to think about your own story. It's okay to have years you feel lost. What insights have you gained? What chapter are you living right now? Take a moment to honor your journey, the struggles, the lessons, and the hope that carries you forward. Thank you for being part of this story. Until next time, keep reflecting, keep growing, and never stop searching for your own insights. I am Christiella. Thank you for joining me.